You're listening to Rep Radio. Our goal is simple. We support, promote, engage, and inspire the arts community by igniting the ghost light that shines on the stages of the up-and-coming, the unsung heroes, the brilliant writers, and the dynamic designers. Our podcast breaks the fourth wall to give you an inside look at the plays and the players. Stay tuned. Rep Radio is on the air. Today on the podcast, director Tyrone L. Robinson talks about the Interact Theater Company production of This Bitter Earth by Harrison David Rivers. Here is my interview with Tyrone L. Robinson. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I'm in the virtual studio with Tyrone L. Robinson, who is the director of the Interact Theater Company production of This Bitter Earth, which is written by Harrison David Rivers. And Tyrone, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Darnell. It's so good to be here.
So I had the opportunity to experience this production opening night,
right?
And I also got a little bit of a moment to chat with you after the show. And I think as soon as the piece sort of began, it just immediately kind of resonated for me for many reasons. One, I'm in an interracial relationship.
Beautiful.
And just great some of the back and forth of the two characters just sounded like many conversations that I've had, and I was almost like, are we reading from a script?
It was so good to meet you and Matthew. Oh my God, that was so much fun, and also to make that connection. I was like, oh, okay, great, yeah. I'm also in an interracial relationship, so
okay.
Yeah, there's recognition there as well for me.
So I know I sort of jumped the gun, as I was talking about how it resonated, but let's step back a little bit. Let's tell us a little bit about you. Tell us about Tyrone.
Oh, sure. Well, I am a director and a writer and an actor. I've been really, really fortunate. I mean, and blessed and lucky and all the things that I've been able to have a really exciting acting career, and now that I'm getting the opportunity to direct at the regional level, it's just such an honor, and to be able to do it first at Interact in Philadelphia, and to have some other opportunities coming down the pike. It's just like, I cannot tell you what an honor it is. I started out, years ago, just wanting to be a chorus boy on Broadway. Like, that was my goal. Like, I wanted to be the dude like dancing in the background. And it's so funny. I always say I used to walk by the New Amsterdam Theater on Broadway when I was first in New York, and I was like, that's where The Lion King was. I was like, if I could just be like the third bush from the left, and don't you know it, I was like the second bush from the left in The Lion King. It was one of my first production contracts. So one of my first big contracts in New York. And I was like, damn it, you got to be careful what you wish for. But I loved that job. And so I have acted for many years and have been able to parlay not only my acting talent and background, but also directing training and also my work as a writer into the collaborative process, which is essentially what directing, I think, is. And I think I studied at NYU. I'm MFA at NYU, Tisch School of the Arts. And that was also, again, it was an MFA in collaboration ultimately. And so I've been able to direct not only theater and musicals, plays as well, but also short film. And I just love working with people. I love collaborating. And one of the things that I love the most about directing is that you get to work with everybody. There's not one person you don't work with. You work with people in the box office. You work with the house manager. You work with, obviously, the actors, every single designer. you work with your artistic director and producer. So that's the long answer, but it's been an amazing road to doing the directing work that I'm doing now. But I think every single part of that road that I've had has been necessary, and now has given me knowledge that I now use in every aspect of the work that I do as a director.
Yeah, that's great. Theater is a village, and
Yes.
you can't interact with all the people who make up the village. You know, what do
Mm-hmm.
you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So when, what was your? I mean, when did you first? What was your first introduction to this bitter earth?
Seth Rozin and I had been working on another project together. And I think I just happened to ask him one day, what's going on at Interact? I had seen two plays at Interact before. I'd seen Hype Man, which was directed by Ozzie Jones, which was awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful actors, wonderful play. And I had seen The Great Leap, which I think Seth had directed. Also, just a beautiful production. So I just had fallen in love with the work at Interact in general. So I was asking Seth about it. And he said, "Oh, we've got one or two things lined up, but we've got this last play that we don't have anything, anybody assigned or directed yet." And he told me what it was about. I was like, "Let me read it." So I gave it a read, and just immediately it resonated with me for not only the personal reasons, but just how it was structured. It's just beautifully written. Harrison did a beautiful job of telling this story of a full relationship. And so I immediately knew that like I had to work on it, and I had to explain how I would do it if I were given the opportunity to direct it to Seth. And so I really prepared, and that was my first exposure to it. Was just Seth giving it to me to read. I don't think he was thinking, you'll direct it. I think he was thinking, let me give it to you to check it out as a piece of theater to get to know.
Interesting. Yeah, because you never know how you end up, in front of pieces, a part of pieces, and how you get to where you are.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what were you thinking after you read it?
I think a couple of things resonated with me right away. One was that it is a love story at its heart. It is a love story. I read it several times and just kept coming back to the idea that at its heart, it is a love story. And it's a love story that allows us to see the totality of a gay interracial relationship. I mean, it's a love story. It's a gay love story. It's a queer love story. And particularly, it's a Black gay love story. And we don't have those in the American theater that I'm aware of. We don't really get to see sort of a Moonlight, the Barry Jenkins film, which just blew the roof off of cinema. We don't get to see that in any real way in the American theater. Terrence McNally is one of my favorite playwrights. Lynn Nottage is also another one. And, they show such intimacy in their relationships that they depict on stage in their plays. And I don't know that we have an example of that in a gay relationship. So that was one thing that kept resonating with me. And then also just this sort of it had sort of a cosmic feel to me. There was something about just two souls kind of wandering the world and wandering the earth, and then kind of finding each other at this Black History, this BLM march. And so that really resonated with me.
Yeah. I as the piece progresses, and it's fast paced for 90 minutes, because it skips over so much, not skips over, but it goes over so much time. I was thinking about the play. The play is in past tense, but it's very much very current.
Absolutely.
Still very relevant now, because there are moments. Black Lives Matter is still very much an active movement.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about, I was sitting on the couch watching the news on Monday. I think it was Monday, and I think there was more information about the Minneapolis shooting of Amir Locke.
Wow.
Just came about, and I just said, I'm gonna have to mention this as well. I'm gonna put this in here too, because the piece doesn't even get to what we've just experienced over the past couple of years.
Absolutely.
And we're like, here it is, and this is how it is. And it almost makes me think about, so when we talk about the character of Jesse, the way I saw Jesse is and I said it to you before. I was like, sometimes you hear in conversations, especially with black people of a certain generation, is
Mhm.
like, all I have to do is stay black and die. You know, this kind of mindset, like, you know,
Yeah.
I can't focus on all of these things. I'm over here doing me,
Maybe.
trying to get the most out of my life here, and
Yeah.
then there's all of this going on in the world, and
Mm,
you know, for Jesse to find this partner in Neil, who is saying, like, you know, all of this stuff you need to be aware of
mm.
too, and he's almost he's almost sort of he's almost sort of addressing Jesse as if Jesse isn't aware of what is going on.
Yeah.
But the way I saw it is that Jesse is aware, but is trying to move forward in life, you know, at the same time. And
Absolutely.
that I was wondering, what are your thoughts on the characters, Jesse and Neil?
Sure. Well, Jesse, who is played expertly by David Bazemore, and Neil, who is played beautifully by Gabriel W. Elmore. Um, you know, they're two. They're sort of two magnets at the opposite ends of the poles. You know, in terms of Black Lives Matter. You know, the one issue and the one topic and the one cause that you think would be the thing that would bring them together is the one thing that causes the most conflict for them, from them,
Yeah.
for them, from the very first moment that they go out on a date, and we get to experience that between them. Um, but I think, you know, going back to something you said was which is really interesting. I mean, I think being a black man in America it's exhausting, right? I don't know how you feel, but to me, it's exhausting. You
Mhm.
know, just getting through my day. You know, I think I told you I was working with young people today in Brooklyn, and just getting to the daggone school to work with the kids and the young people, and to you know, pass on what I, you know, teach them, and then just getting home. Like, it is a, you know, there's all so many like microaggressions, so many things that you encounter just on a day to day as a black man. So it is exhausting just living, just living my life. And so to obviously Black Lives Matter is absolutely important and pivotal, and but to have this character Neil, who is a white, you know, well-meaning Black Lives Matter activist, dating Jesse, this, you know, black man who's a playwright, and who's doing his activism through his art, essentially. To have this white man tell him that, you know, his empathy is not acceptable, and to try and tell him how he should be about the movement is absolutely problematic, and is part of what creates the drama in the play, which is so genius. Harrison writes, and so I think, to answer your question, I think that it allows us to examine allyship. And, you know, the conversation about allyship has shifted since the play was even written in 2017. You know, since George Floyd, and, you know, the George Floyd verdict in 2020, summer 2020, I think the allyship conversation has shifted. And I think this play brilliantly allows us to examine and interrogate what allyship should look like, particularly coming from white folks speaking to black people about Black Lives Matter. So I think that's what essentially we're left to have conversations about after the play, is what allyship looks like, what it should be, and how it's poorly exhibited, you know, through the character of Neil in the play.
Yeah. I think you know, observing the last 2 years, you know, I was kind of in my head saying, "Where have you all been?"
Mm,
You know, that was
hmm.
kind of the mindset. And actually, when you think about it, it was like this mindset of activism kind of not started, but just sort of reignited with the presidency
Yeah,
of Donald J. Trump.
that's really
And
interesting. Yeah.
because you know, immediately after that was a women's march,
Mm-hmm.
and everyone was there, and being at the women's march, you would see that they were not just there about women.
Interesting.
There were signs about everything. It was sort
Hmm.
of like everyone is trying to check their box in this
And
in
be
this
heard.
in this march, and be heard. And then from there, it was like it almost felt like you know, the mindset of people who were focused on, you know, maybe getting their next job, or
Hmm.
you know, doing their next recreational thing. This became their job, you know, in a sense. And it was like if you talk to them, it was there wasn't much of a conversation that would not lead to their next demonstration, their next
Oh,
event, and so on. And it just seemed a little bit, you know, it seemed a little bit exhausting,
oh,
because every day you're walking through. I mean, I feel like every day I consume the news, so I know. There was a mindset before where I was thinking like, I always want to have something to talk about at the water cooler,
mm,
but it wasn't like gossip. It was just I wanted to make sure I understood what was going on in the world.
sure.
But now, that water cooler is not, arguably isn't safe,
Wow.
because of offices and structures and everything.
Yeah.
And so we feel like, so then you sort of ask yourself, like, why am I processing all of this if it just frustrates me?
Yeah.
And then I'm just sitting here frustrated. So that was the part of where I kind of resonated with Jesse. It was like
Mhm.
Jesse was focusing on his own art,
Yes.
and but not necessarily thinking his art had to be, a part of this, a part of the movement. It
Sure.
almost seemed like, because he has that moment where he shares with Neil, and it's almost an escape. It's like,
Absolutely.
if I could just hover above all of this and go to a world where, you know, everyone we know and love is there being celebrated, and is
Yes.
Black joy. Like
Yeah.
he was sort of living in Black joy and not trying to focus on, on the state of the world as it is. And
Yeah.
I thought that was something really interesting.
I'm so glad you identified that. Yeah, wow, you unpacked a lot there. I mean, I think there's a couple of things come to mind for me, just in thinking about Jesse the character, and joy. It's absolutely the truth. I mean, the play. One of the things that we explored later in the process before we opened, I explored with the actors was, finding those moments of levity in like every single moment of levity. We're gonna excavate the script, anew, as if we're just looking at it for the first time. We're going to find these moments of levity, these moments of, joy, because they're in there, and there are a lot of them. And
Mhm.
so one of the things that was really important to me, even early on, when I first read the play, was making sure that in those moments that we could lift it and that we could find the joy in this relationship and in this love of these soulmates. We would do that. So the Black joy is absolutely, that you're talking about, is absolutely there. I think also, keeping in mind that Jesse is a Black man who grew up in a home that was homophobic, that was not reaffirming, that was not supportive of who he was as a person. And so, I liken that to trauma, and so Jesse is absolutely a survivor of trauma. He definitely is living his life as a person who doesn't always isn't always easy to open up and trust people, and so there are often walls for him, that he has to work through in building relationships. So, that I think is important to identify, is that he's someone who doesn't easily trust and doesn't easily let his guard down and open himself up. And we're told by the playwright that he uses his wit, almost like to protect himself.
The
Um,
weapon. I
yeah,
mean,
as a
yeah,
weapon,
yeah.
almost like a weapon. Um, so,
Which
but
is
yeah,
also kind of a queer trait, if you
yes,
will.
we
Yeah.
have to protect ourselves, right? Like we don't get to just be frivolous about that. Not only our bodies are, in danger often, when we think about trans lives, when we think about, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, the entire spectrum. Yeah, our bodies are often, offended against. So we have to be protective of our bodies, and we have to be protective of who we are, and our identities, and our spirits. Um, and I think also to note, the play takes place between 2012, where the two of them meet, Jesse and Neil meet at the Million Hoodie March for Trayvon Martin, happened on March 21st, 2012 in Union Square. And then it goes up until 2015. So the play ends before the presidency, of Donald Trump. And one of the conversations that I had with Harrison, when I was preparing for rehearsals, was, would you want to go back and like revisit any of of the moments, and post George Floyd, would you want to go back and And his answer was made a lot of sense to me, and it led me in my direction of the plate piece. Is that no, like it is a piece that lives where it is, and we need to treat it as a period piece. Essentially, it's a very modern period piece, but it's a period piece. So I treated it just like that.
It's interesting to think of, okay, so what if a similar story from 2000, that takes place 2017 to 2020?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
What would that look and feel like?
Yeah.
And then, on the other side of whenever we get to the other side of
Hmm.
this pandemic, like what would it look like
Oh my
as
God.
well too? Because there are many conversations about the activism has always been there. It
Yes.
just wasn't your, it was, we used to embody having side hustles,
Mm.
not having so many. We have 4 or 5 things, we
Yeah.
wear so many different hats, and now we're really trying to focus on how do we put everything under that one hat.
Wow.
And I think it's sort of melding into, the jobs we choose, the relationships we are in, and the
Yep.
company we keep. And it would just be so interesting to see, what a reboot, not a reboot, but I
Uh-huh.
guess what would be the next This Bitter Earth. You know, it's it. There was a series on HBO a while back called If These Walls Could Talk,
I heard
and
about that.
it
Yeah.
was about it was it were there were these queer stories that took place in the same house over different periods of time.
Beautiful.
And I was thinking about that for this, and I was like, what if we took the concept of this and sort of
Yeah.
dropped it into a different moment and see, you know, what would be similar, what would be different, and
Wow.
we would ultimately look back and say nothing has changed.
Sure. Well, you're reminding me a little bit of did you see The Inheritance when it was on Broadway? The Inheritance, Matthew Lopez
No,
play.
I didn't.
You know
It's
what
in
I'm talking
New
about?
York, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You
Yes, I have the books on my shelf.
uh-huh,
You
uh-huh.
can't see the background here. I
Yeah,
have the books on my shelf as to
I love your
read
background, by the
read
way.
these when you get a chance. Yes,
Yeah,
it's
it's
totally
they're
right.
gorgeous. I was very lucky to be able to see them. And it's reminded me a little bit of that.
Mm.
We're seeing queer men connect over sort of a time space continuum. Um, and I think about the Boys in the Band is another play that comes to mind.
Yes, yes.
This sort of contemporary, contextualized like idea of what it was to be gay. 40 years plus or whatever ago. Yeah, I'd be curious about that. Harrison has written a follow up to This Bitter Earth, and I can't recall the title right now. But check it out. It's Harrison David Rivers. I think it may be either on his website or, but he I think followed up This Bitter Earth with a follow up play using the same character of Jesse. Um, and I wonder if he delves into sort of the post Trump era, post Obama, post Trump era. We talk about Obama in the play in This Bitter Earth. Uh,
Yeah. Um, oh, yeah, so that's a good point too, because, you know, the way this piece ends, it's sort of like it makes you realize it's a one act,
mhm.
because in a one act, the play ends where it should begin.
Interesting.
Like this is the pilot to the world that we're going to be in.
Interesting.
And uh, I always think a good one act does that. It sort of
Okay.
sets us up for, I wonder what happens next,
Ah.
because
Yeah.
there's all this pushback. Jesse's trying to focus on his own things, and then life happens, and I wonder how that changes Jesse moving forward. So yeah, that'll be interesting to see.
You
I'm
know,
gonna have to look
we
that up.
had an audience member who saw the show on Friday, last Friday, and she sat for 3 minutes after the show ended
Hmm.
and just was like, I just had to like sit and just kind of collect myself and get myself together before I got up and walked out. It was one of the like I've seen movies where literally I just have to sit for a moment and just, kind of breathe and say, okay, wow. That kind of shifted me a little bit, made a little change inside of me. And this woman, middle-aged woman, had to kind of sit for a few minutes after the play. And I think this play does that. I think it makes people ponder, particularly if they have some kind of lived experience, that connects It makes them kind of ponder, their own experience in connection with what they've just seen.
Yeah. I also really like how, I was kind of, I wouldn't, yeah, I feel like that big moment in the play kind of, it sort of comes out of left field because there really isn't a conversation about that struggle,
Sure.
even though we return to it in several moments where
Sure.
we keep getting closer and closer to the moment. So if you're paying attention, you know that something happens after this
Yeah.
moment because we've returned to it 2 times already. So when we get here, now we have to see
It's
what
so
happens.
beautifully structured.
And when I saw that, I said, wow, here we are thinking that maybe this is, whose mind is going to be changed in this situation. Is Jesse going to resonate more with Neil? Is Neil going to resonate more with Jesse? And while we're focusing on that, the the I guess the sort of the thing that Jesse and Neil together have to always worry about and be aware of is something we completely forget about. We just
Yeah.
kind of, you know, I think the piece does a really good job normalizing that they are in a gay interracial relationship. You
Yeah.
know, it's only when they go visit their families that it's clear. And it's so interesting how Jesse picks up on some things about Neil's parents and and Neil with Jesse's parents and
Hmm.
um that part it's something that weighed on me as well when I thought about I live in a predominantly African American neighborhood that is being
Hmm.
rapidly gentrified and um walking around here with my partner gave me a little bit of a pause.
Wow.
I definitely gave it some thought, and it took me a while to realize that I had just sort of carried that, not exactly sure where it came from. I
Interesting.
just sort of had this, caution.
Sure.
I always proceed with caution, and to see them in their moment, when they're out in the world, I was thinking the whole time like, it's this gay is a gay. This is the gay bar they're stumbling out of, like. uh,
Yeah.
Not completely in tune with their faculties,
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
they've been having fun. And I said, this is a moment. It's like whenever you see a movie where someone ends up in the street,
Uh-huh.
that there's a car coming, or if the focus is too much on a driver doing everything but driving the car,
Yeah.
you're like, oh my God, an accident's coming. Like you think about that, and
The play is so beautifully structured.
yeah, it was just
So structured.
interesting. Can you talk about these sort of intimacy moments there, and
Yeah.
how as a team, did you approach that?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked me about that. We, by the way, we've been reviewed in the Inquirer and the Broad Street Review,
Mhm.
and some other places. But the reviews have been really, really kind and really overwhelmingly positive about the play. And the reviewers have picked up on just so many like beautiful details about the work of David and Gabriel, our two actors. And I just want to, I'm so glad you asked me that because it gives me an opportunity to mention our amazing, amazing intimacy director, Colleen Hughes. Colleen was just invaluable in the process. Invaluable in the process. One of the things that I said from the first beginning of talking to the design team and also with Colleen is that I wanted the play to feel like we were eavesdropping on a relationship. We were eavesdropping on these two men in these moments, particularly in the intimacy moments. But I just wanted us to feel like we were watching something we shouldn't be watching because it was so well done, so specific and so organic. And so to answer your question, in the rehearsal room, the first thing that Colleen did was set up a space whereby the actors were very clear about their boundaries and about what felt safe for them. We were able to touch in with those things almost on a daily basis, particularly now in COVID time. We wanted to make sure that everyone felt safe, everyone felt valued, everyone felt like their voice was being heard in the space. And Colleen really helped to, I mean, that's always sort of, those are tenets and pillars of my own practice as a director, in the way that I run a rehearsal room. But also, Colleen helped to really make those even more a part of the work that they did with intimacy. So we pretty much went through the intimacy moments as they occurred in the play, and really let the actors kind of lead the process. And then I would, sort of use my directors, here's the storytelling that's happening, and here's the visual story that I'm getting from what you guys are doing. I would be able to help sort of shape it with the actors. And then Colleen was there to really incorporate the technical aspects of the intimacy direction, and also to give her own, suggestions and collaboration in the process, which, like, I think we had 3 layers and levels of collaboration that was really harmonious. And that's why I think those intimacy moments were able to be built and constructed so organically, because they came out of the actors, but also they were able to be curated and edited, by both Colleen and I's eye. And then they had the extra layer of Colleen's expertise as an intimacy director to make everyone feel safe. That then freed the actors ultimately, in knowing and specifying what their boundaries were. Then that allowed them to play full out within their boundaries with each other. Yeah. And so that's the long answer, but I really had to be clear, because Colleen, without her, that layer of specificity and that layer of safety would not have, maybe we wouldn't have been able to achieve all of those same things without that. So I'm so happy that we had Colleen Hughes with us.
Yeah. I was really glad to see those moments, because sometimes the direction is always trying to be so perfect about it, but there was something kind of clumsy and sort of the characters, the characters discovering each other.
Yeah.
In those moments that made it feel so real.
Hey, thank you so much for saying that.
Appreciated that.
And thank you, Colleen, and the actors. Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any conversations about sort of resonance with the actors? Could they see, elements of themselves in these characters, or situations, moments, conversations that they brought into the room and into the process?
That's a really good question. The answer is that absolutely, for sure. Yeah. I think for sure, both Gabriel and David brought, some of themselves to the characters, in that, David and I would talk a lot about the fact that Jesse has this, whip sharp, this wit that is like razor sharp. And so, there were moments where I'd say, now how would David say that? Because, we have a tendency when we are performing to really try to, exemplify our characters, and really try to make them, be as noble and as good as they can be. But there are moments where Jesse, who's played by David, some moments that he could have done better, perhaps, or he could have been a better partner to Neil. And so there's some moments that, he had to kind of go there and be a little less than perfect, and a little bit less than the ideal partner. And so there were moments where I'd say, can you sharpen that? Let's show that wit a little bit more. Let's tap into that a little sharper, a little edgier. And there were times when, I'd have to say, okay, well, how would David say that? That helped at least to bridge that gap a little bit more. And with Neil, or with Gabriel, who plays Neil, Gabriel just has such a heart. He's just such an open heart, just as an individual. And so there was that part of him that was just sort of like, just the earnest, well-meaning aspect of Neil that I think comes across, that is very much a part of who I think Gabriel is as a person.
Yeah. I like how, also talking about the writing, I like how they, both characters come in with their sort of expectations, and also their ignorance, about like how to move forward in this. And there are these moments where there's a moment where they have a conversation where it's like, okay, so we obviously feel different ways about this. So you be you, I'll be me, and then we'll fill in the gaps. in between. And that is sort of like the message for like every relationship. It's like, you know, it's not about whatever your expectation was when you walked in here. It's the reality of what it is. So and then Neil has this he has this great monologue where he talks about you know, it's the little things.
Yeah.
And there were many of those moments where I just, you know, I'm just sitting and you know, my partner squeezes my hand and I'm like, you know,
Oh,
there's
yes.
there are moments where you just don't understand.
Well, and when you've been with somebody for so long, like those things that used to be, oh, they're so cute, then
Yeah.
start to turn into, will you please stop doing
Mhm.
that? But
Yeah,
absolutely, there's so
and
much
it's
love.
and instead of like you know, you are trying to get to the root of understanding in it,
Hmm.
but it is something that kind of, you know, it may irk you at one point until you have to actually realize, oh, you're not doing that to spite me.
Right.
You're doing that because you're picking up on something. You know, he says something along the lines, I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
that you know, he lets go of my hand because he knows something that I don't. And
Yeah.
you know, I've that moment was resonating with me so profoundly, and I just said, yeah, yeah,
Let me tell you, even in New York City, you know, there's times where we have to be careful because it's like you have to be aware of your surroundings. So, you know, the fact that the couple Neil and Jesse end up moving to St. Paul, Minnesota, you know, and they're in a place that may be a little bit slightly less progressive than a big city, you know, from New York where they met each other. That resonates, and I think the fact that Jesse is hyper aware of it, where Neil doesn't have to be because Neil has the privilege not to have to be aware all the time of his surroundings, that also resonates. But yeah, this I'm so glad you said that that you know your partner squeezed your hand, and this play is so perfect for couples. It's so perfect for people who are in love and dating or getting to know each other, because this play so beautifully depicts every single moment of a full relationship. So you
yeah,
get to see that sort of clumsy stumbling, like just first, you know, meeting and getting to know each other, and sort of the butterflies and the excitement of that. And then you get to watch, you know, the totality of the totality of the relationship, you know. So it's beautiful. It's really beautiful, and it's really, I think it creates moments that are so specific and so specifically written that they can, you know, a straight couple or a lesbian couple, anyone can relate to it. You know, it's so universal because it's so specific.
yeah. I feel like you know, we sort of walk out of there with the mindset of some of those last lines of protect your gifts. And you know, I was thinking about can you refresh my memory on the name of the
Yeah,
writer?
Essex Hempo.
Essex Tempo.
Hmm.
Yeah, the protect your gifts moment. It makes me think about, you know, okay, what happens after this piece? Will he continue to protect his gifts?
Yeah.
And how will he grow while protecting his gifts at the same time?
Oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we only we only have enough brain space for one of our ideas at a time, like, you know,
Hmm.
one of the things that keeps us safe. And you know, I was feeling like that for Jesse, like
Okay.
Jesse, like, you know, yes, I want this, I want to be in this relationship, I want it to keep going, but at the same time there are things that I'm protecting, you know, as there are things that I have to protect. There's really no, I can't hand these off to you. I have to protect them, and
Absolutely.
I will carry throughout, you know, continuing to do that.
Hmm.
And I think that at least to me kind of came as like this is sort of that struggle that they're having, because Neil doesn't realize, or Neil hasn't yet understood that there are these things that Jesse has to protect that he can't trust anyone else to protect for him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you know, Jesse in the play is a writer. He's a playwright. And he tells us right at the beginning of the play, you know, I have the ability to, you know, process my thoughts, and I have the ability to put my thoughts on paper. Um, you know, those are two of his main blessings that and gifts that he talks about protecting. Um, and I think about like I don't remember who the writer was, but I once heard a famous writer say that the enemy to creativity is distraction. And so, yeah, as a playwright, I mean, the number one thing that Jesse needs is quiet and peace, and a place to do his work without distraction. And obviously, he has met the love of his life. He's met his soulmate in Neil. But still, he's a writer, and I think one of the hardest things is for writers to do is to block out the rest of the world and get their work done, and focus those thoughts in that energy. So yeah, I mean, you bring up a really great point. And I'd be curious if you ever talk to Harrison. I would love to find out what his take is on it, and what's next. What, yeah, because protecting your blessings, protecting your gifts is like a major theme in the play.
Yeah. And I guess protect your gifts is sort of a takeaway. But in your opinion, what do you hope an audience takes away from this experience?
Well, I think that in thinking about how to present this play, I was mindful of who was going to receive the story, because how could I not be? How could I not be aware that, but I would say, before I answer your question, that one of the most beautiful things that I've seen is that the play has been attracting and been received by people from the queer community, particularly Black people from the queer community. I've so enjoyed seeing people who look like me and who look like Jesse, who look like David, who plays Jesse, coming to experience the story, because it is a story that is uniquely a Black queer story and a Black interracial queer story. So I want to say that that's been really gratifying for me, and to receive like good reception from the community. But I think even more beautifully is to see people who are, in straight couples, straight relationships, or heterosexual relationships, to see people weeping, or to see people who, are not necessarily, who may not identify as being part of the LGBTQIA plus community, but to see them being affected deeply. And, the theaters received emails about how people are being touched and moved by the play, who I would not say identify as queer or gay. And so I think the takeaway that I'm hoping is that people will take away compassion, empathy. I'm hoping that they'll take away, the idea of love, loving one another more than they maybe even did before. I know for me, working on the play, there were times when, with my relationship, that I would like put my work down and like spend time with my husband, spend time with my partner, and say, you know what, I'll finish this tomorrow, because it's important to, spend time with those who we love. So I hope that will resonate with people, that they'll, take away the idea that, time is kind of irrelevant. It's really about the quality of time that we spend with one another.
Yeah. And I think it's also great to see a story of an interracial relationship, because there's always this thought that perhaps the two in the relationship are in a way running away from their cultures,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not it. This is sort of a inviting you in, and
Absolutely.
kind of sort of sharing your gifts. you
Yeah.
know Focus is protecting your gifts, but it's like sharing your gifts too, and not just necessarily keeping them um, you know uh, um, inside the box that is our culture and sort of our
Sure.
race. And I think as we experience more stories, I think more people will kind of take that away, because I honestly don't understand what the conflict was before,
Yeah.
about interracial relationships. It's just sometimes you resonate with someone that you resonate with,
Absolutely.
and you want to learn. You want to learn from someone who has had a different life experience than you, and you you can do that when you surround yourself with different cultures, with different
Absolutely.
people. So Yeah, so I thought this was, yeah. uh, w- why do you think we don't see more pieces like this? Not just in the regional
Yeah,
circuit, but on the big stage and on
sure. Well, I think part of the challenge is who's telling the stories. So, I think that um, for a long time, I think particular individuals were allowed to tell the stories that we saw on stage, and other people didn't have the megaphone, and they weren't given the platform to tell stories, to tell their stories. I think when I think of one of the first queer love stories that I actually experienced, I was 8 years old, and I saw a filmed version of Torch Song Trilogies on HBO, Harvey Firestein. And it was a play first on Broadway, or it was off Broadway at La Mama, and then it had done so well that I think they transferred it, and then it was made into a film. So um, and I experienced that as an 8 year old watching television. So stories have been told for a long time, but it's taken this long to, I think, normalize queer stories to a point where we actually see it not only being told from the perspective of a black man, but now being given sort of a different twist, which is what makes the play interesting. That he makes it an interracial love story that he himself can understand because he's in an interracial love relationship, but also that he gets to tell this story in an authentic way because it's something that he has experienced. So I think part of the challenge is that, like, who gets to tell the stories. I think that's changing. I think the theater is, we're starting to see Native American playwrights, being presented. I'm thinking about off Broadway in New York. We're starting to see stories being told, particularly from Asian American playwrights. I think for a long time it was just like David Henry Huang, who we would see like that was he was sort of like the Asian American playwright that wrote everything that was seen on Broadway and beyond. But now we have, I think the Chinese Lady is going to be at the Public Theater in New York this season, as well as other, it's being done at the Longworth Theater in New Haven and other places. So, we're starting to see theaters welcome and bring in and embrace stories from different voices. Interact's always done that, since
Yeah.
its inception. So Interact's always been kind of an incubator and a place where diverse voices were heard. But I think, to your point, the larger American theater, I think, is starting to seek and even embrace and lift up voices that are different.
Yeah, I was thinking that, as interact has interact has always been, a place to kind of expect what you see on stage to challenge you, to
Yeah.
make you think, and often infuriate you. And sort of,
I love that.
you walk out of there fueled, but you feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, and this was this piece as well did not disappoint, much like every
Nice.
that comes off Interact stage. But yeah, it felt fitting. It felt fitting for
Mm.
Interact to bring this to the stage as well. And
Yeah,
the
Seth is
space
amazing.
allowed us to see the different moments. The scenic design allowed us to step into those different elements without really too much of a not an upset, but too much of an adjustment to the set. Just very simply, we're going to move these chairs and that table over here and
Yeah.
the apartment. And I was looking at, it's sort of like this. It's like a sidewalk that's kind of going up on a diagonal, and I was like, this isn't a crossroad, because they're never on opposite sides of it.
Yeah.
They're always both on the same side of it. But I like how it separates, the more intimate spaces that they
Yeah.
exist in with the outside world.
Thank you for noticing that.
Being the bar and the street and so on. So yeah,
Yeah, thank you for noticing that.
yeah,
Colin McIlvaine is our scenic designer, and he just killed it. He killed it. One of the
yes,
things that I was hoping that we would achieve, like, I had this image of us seeing this story take place within like a memory box, because it is a memory play. Mm-hmm. So sort of a box that we keep pictures in and memories in. And, Colin just took that and put it on steroids and came up with this brilliant concept of having all these different play spaces that we get to see the actors move around in. So it's really brilliant.
Yeah. Well, the production is called This Bitter Earth. It is on stage at Interact Theater Company, and you can get tickets now through February 20th. And you can go to Interact Theater, that's theaterre.org, for tickets and information. Tyrone L. Robinson, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Darnell. Thank you so much.
Just a little bit. I really enjoyed this experience and enjoyed the opportunity to speak with you briefly, at the end of the show and this time here. So I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with me.
Man, you are so welcome. Thank you so much, Darnell. And please give my best to Matthew, and I appreciate it.
Rep Radio is an Emory production. You can find Rep Radio on social media at Rep Radio on Facebook, at Rep_radio on Instagram and Twitter. For more information, visit us online at em3ry.com. Ride with us. Emory is on the move.